plants in the laptop. Take one. All right, so the first thing is, where are we? Okay, first of all, we're at the Smith College Botanic Garden. There's the conservatory behind me. I'm surrounded by the gardens and our amazing arboretum all around us. But where are we in terms of the world of plants on Earth? Okay, so our class is really focused on flowering plants, which are the most evolved class of plants. You could think of them as the current state of the art, like iPhone 10, or is it X? What's the highest now? X, I think. Okay, anyway, so flowering plants are like the iPhone X, but the iPhone 1 was things like photosynthetic bacteria in the ocean. And then that's going to evolve to like the earliest land plants, which are the things like liverworts and mosses. And then we've got things like ferns that come after that. And then eventually we get to seeds, and seeds evolve on conifers, which are these kinds of evergreen plants that you see, these needle plants behind me, otherwise known as the gymnosperms. And then finally out of that we get to where we are right now, which is the latest technology, which is flowering plants that are actually using flowers to reproduce instead of cones. So our class will touch briefly on the conifers that use cones to reproduce. We may even run into a fern. I'm certainly happy to talk to you about mosses and other types of plants, but mostly our class is going to be focused on the angiosperms, or flowering plants. Now, within the flowering plants, we have two more subgroups called the monocots and the dicots. And basically you just want to think of these as two groups of plants with common ancestors. So the monocots are a group of plants that descended from ancestral lily-type plants, and the dicots are the group of plants that descended from ancestral magnolia-type plants. So basically the group of plants that their grandma was named Lily, and the other group of plants that their grandma was named Magnolia. The words monocot and dicot are derived from the word cotyledon. Cotyledon is an organ present in the seed when the plant is a little embryo inside its seed. The monocots have a single cotyledon, monocot, and the dicots have two cotyledons, dicotyledon. So that's where those two words come from. For our purposes, we're not going to be dissecting seeds. We're going to be more seeing things like differences in visible morphology. So for example, the monocots have parallel veins in their leaves, whereas the dicots have netted veins in their leaves. And we'll see those kinds of patterns recurring as we move through the plants over the semester. All right, now within the flowering plants, we're going to divide our plants into two categories. The first one is herbaceous plants. Herbaceous plants are young, juicy, soft, green tissue, like the plants you see before me. You could still bend it like that. And what it means that if you're herbaceous is that you grew this year, your primary growth. So this plant produced everything you see here this year, and none of it was born last year or the year before that or the year before that. This is 1 year's growth. When winter comes, this is going to die back, it gets cut down, and then new herbaceous growth will come up next year. Okay, and then the other option is woody plants. And here's a beautiful Coosa dogwood. This tree is probably about 100 years old. Once upon a time, in year one, it was a little herbaceous seedling, but what grew in that first year stuck around. That part of the plant started to age. That's called secondary growth. And then in year two, the woody part, the secondary growth, stuck around, and we got another year of herbaceous growth. Then by winter, the second year starts to harden off and age, and then each year this plant puts on a little bit of new herbaceous growth and continues to mature and thicken its woody growth or secondary growth. Okay, so you can see right here, last year this branch grew to this little scar, this little marker right here, that's called the terminal bud scale scar. And then this is what grew this year. And when this first came out in spring, it was young, paler green, and then now we're filming this in beginning of September, this has started to what we call harden off and become woody. And by the time next spring comes along, you're gonna see these hard buds. We're gonna be sitting here. This will have gotten barky on it, and then next year's growth is gonna emerge from these buds and start to grow this year's herbaceous growth, okay? So what you're looking at is 2020, let's see, where's the next terminal bud scale scar? Probably was about here, right? 2019, 2018, etc., going all the way up. And if you look in here, you can see that this tree is actually over 125 years old. And what used to be a tiny little seedling has now become that thick, beautiful, massive tree. Okay, so when we think about a plant, we're gonna talk about a plant in terms of organs. And you know those things. Oh, wait a minute. What are the organs of a plant? Leaf, stem, flower, root. All those things should make sense to you. So let's talk a little bit about how a plant emerges. When we're talking about leaf arrangement, what we mean is the position of the leaves on the stem. So you can see on this Camperdown elm that at each place, at each node, there's just one leaf emerging. One comes out here, one comes out here, one comes out here. And that's known as alternate leaf arrangement, and the fancy word for leaf arrangement is phyllotaxy. All right, so compare that to this maple, which has what's known as opposite phyllotaxy. So here's our stem, here's our internode, here's our nodes, but each place where there's something coming, there's a pair. So here's two leaves emerging at this node. Here's two leaves emerging at the next node. And even the fruits, when they form, are in pairs. These are little samaras or helicopters, which are the maple's fruits. And you can see that there's two of them right there. Down on this, here's a place where this tree has formed branches. The branches are in pairs. And so all the pattern of this plant is known as opposite phyllotaxy. That's two organs per node instead of one. And then our third option for leaf arrangement or phyllotaxy is three or more. And so you can see here at this node, we've got a whole mess of stuff. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So here's node, internode, node, internode. But at this node, you can see that we've got a whole whirl of leaves, 5 leaves emerging. And that's known as whorled, W-H-O-R-L-E-D, whorled phyllotaxy. So our three choices are alternate, opposite, or whorled.